The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz along with my co-host Tony Palmeri, and we're very pleased on this edition of Eye on Oshkosh to be joined by a local restaurant owner, Phil Levine. Phil has been here a few times in the past, and we're happy to welcome you back again. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We want to talk about a few things.
Sure.
First and foremost, we're going to want to talk on this particular show about the decision that was handed down just a couple of days before we're taping this by Judge Barbara Key on the smoking ban in Oshkosh, which is now back in effect. And then we also want to spend some time talking about legislation that's currently in Madison being looked at by our elected officials there, and that would be a statewide type smoking initiative.
Right.
So first things first, you know, the smoking ban, it had been on hold for a number of months while Judge Key was looking at, you know, different arguments from both sides, the attorney for the restaurant owners and the attorney for Breathe Free Oshkosh. And then she made a decision, which I was very surprised when I read the paper and saw the decision. Were you caught off guard by the decision?
We were totally caught off guard by the decision. We had felt good. Our lawyers had given us reason to think we were going to win this when it eventually came about. We were also caught off guard because we were informed by the Oshkosh Daily Northwestern. Unfortunately, our attorney was out of the office and he didn't look at his facts until later in the day, apparently. The Breathe Free people, their attorney was in the office when the facts arrived, and he disseminated the information to Breathe Free, who went to the Northwestern, who went to the local TV stations, basically. And you know, when I got my phone call, I had to ask the reporter from the Northwestern to stop a minute so I could catch my breath and kind of digest what he had just told me. So yeah, we were caught off guard.
And I think all along, as you just said, you know, you thought you had some strong arguments. You really thought that you could win this.
It may have been grasping at straws a little bit on our end, you know, wishful thinking. But yeah, we thought we did have some decent arguments that could at least sway the judge at this level, that we could win this.
Well, for people who didn't see the Northwestern or who haven't seen the television reports, why don't you just tell the audience, you know, basically what Judge Key said?
Basically what Judge Key said, that because of the advanced notification, the coverage on the ordinance and the referendum question itself, that our argument of the question being vague and that the electorate did not know what they were voting on kind of lost some of its strength. She analyzed how much comment was made both in the newspaper, on TV, and she felt
certainly here.
And certainly here. You know, both sides beat it to death, and she felt that the electorate was well enough informed that they could have made a decision. She was not happy with the wording. She still left that open in her final decision, but not so much to the point that she would have voted on our side. So that was the gist of it, and some of our other arguments she just dismissed in kind. I mean, I haven't even gone into detail because our main argument was the vagueness of the referendum question itself. So,
Margie Davey from
Yes.
Breathe Free Oshkosh was quoted in the paper as saying, "In my opinion, the restaurant owners who were opposed to this have had a 9-month reprieve to get used to the fact that there is at some point going to be some restrictions on smoking in Oshkosh. They should be able to accept it now and be thankful for the reprieve they had and welcome it for the good of the community and for the good of public health." So are you now welcoming this for the good of the community and public health?
the old saying is, when given lemons make lemonade, that's what we're going to do. I mean, there is some talk about an appeal, but I don't know how serious it is. I personally think it's time to mend some fences and move on with business.
Talk about that for a while, Phil. When the judge initially put, I guess, an injunction on this, was there an expectation that the restaurant owners and the smoking ban proponents would get together and work something out?
Yes.
There was that expectation.
Mediation was ordered by the judge.
And what happened in the mediation process?
I'm going out on a limb here. At mediation, and the judge told us that we could not, at mediation, we were told that we could not divulge anything that was said in mediation in case it would get back to the judge herself. Now that this has been ruled upon, I'm going out on a limb and kind of let you know. We did want to compromise. We were willing on our side, we the restaurateurs, wanted to take a form of the Neenah or Fond du Lac ordinance to balance the slate across the valley. Have an even playing field. There was no compromise on the breathe-free side at all.
Phil, how does the Oshkosh ordinance differ from the Neenah ordinance?
The Neenah ordinance allows smoking at a full-service bar, no smoking in dining rooms. There is no need for separate ventilation or walls, the airtight wall type structure. Whereas in Oshkosh, if you don't have a completely separate room that's completely walled off and separately ventilated, you can't smoke at all.
So no Neenah or Fond du Lac restaurant owner was put in a position of having to spend lots of money
Correct.
Right.
to
Correct.
create, okay.
Correct. Ours, they, all along, they never hid the fact that in each municipality they moved to, they tried to up the ante on the strictness of the ordinance. And when we got to Oshkosh, we were obviously going to be more strict than Neenah or Fond du Lac. And as you can see, past Oshkosh, they've gone to both Madison and Appleton and gotten an all-workplace smoking ban.
So does that help? Will that help? The fact that Appleton's ban is very restrictive, will that help with this competitive situation?
It may a little. Once Appleton does go into effect, theirs goes into effect in July, we're in ours now. So there's a couple months separation there. And two, there are still other places. Neenah is less restrictive, Menasha doesn't have one, Amarillo, Winneconne does not have one. So there are other opportunities. Jimmy's White House in Butimore is another place. I mean, there are still opportunities to go places that are unfettered by a ban.
Okay, sure.
What has your clientele, what has their reaction been in the last couple of days now? She made this decision on Monday, late Monday. I'm assuming that the ban went into effect right away on Tuesday. What's the reaction from your customers been?
The customers that have showed up are angry. And that's smokers and non-smokers alike. They thought we got a raw deal. My customer base has always been very loyal. They understand our point of view. We're not pro-smoking, we're just pro-fairness, equality there. And but I will admit, the word came out on Tuesday. It hit Oshkosh proper, where the rumor was going around. Tuesday night and Wednesday night were half of a normal night already. And that's what happened when we voted on the ban originally. My business dropped immediately. That's what happened in Appleton. The first 2 weeks after the Appleton ban was voted on, even though it didn't go into place until July 1, bars on the College Avenue Strip were down 40%. And then, because people thought the ban went into effect immediately. There is some circling of the wagons right now. The customers are upset. They don't know how to take this, and they don't know all the rules and regulations now. They have to be re-educated.
Well, why don't we re-educate them or try?
The ban goes back into effect as it was voted upon back in April of 2004. If you do not have a separately ventilated smoking room, you have to be no smoking unless you can prove that you're a tavern. The tavern exemption says that if you do less than 30% of your total gross revenue in food, you're considered a tavern and you're allowed to smoke. The other thing that a couple people applied for and received were the hardship exemptions, stating if you dropped 15% of business over the same 3-month period, April through July of 2004 as compared to 2003, you would be given a 1-year temporary exemption from the smoking ban. I believe only 3 places in Oshkosh applied for it and received it. One of them has gone out of business since then.
Which one is that?
That would be Great Plains Eatery.
Okay. Now, just a question, because I truly don't know the answer to this. You said April, or May, June, and July were the 3 months?
Right.
Okay. Now, So okay, all right, never mind. I just answered my own question.
Okay.
I just answered my own question.
Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't one of the problems with the referendum that it didn't have a mechanism to force the restaurateurs to prove hardship?
We didn't have to come in with any hard evidence that the city could look at, nor
Now,
did
that hasn't changed, right?
It has not changed. There can still be some fudging.
So any restaurant in town can come into the city and say hardship, and there's no mechanism in this legislation to
Not-
force you to say, Phil, open your books.
Right, none whatsoever. The enforcement issue is the biggest problem in here completely.
So what's to prevent restaurant owners from using the hardship clause if they feel as passionately about this as you do?
In my instance, I ran it by my accountant, a very professional lady. She's done a great job for me. She and her father for the past 20 years. I asked her, can we fudge some numbers? I mean, if other people are cheating, this ordinance basically is forcing honest people to become dishonest. Because once somebody does it, you have to do it to keep up. My CPA refused to do it. She doesn't want to lose her license. She doesn't want to. So
Right.
basically, the ethics of the people involved are the only things keeping people from running to the city and doing it.
Isn't it possible, Phil, that after a year that business at restaurants might actually improve as a result of the no smoking, with the argument that it's a cleaner environment, more husbands and wives with small children will be more likely to go to establishments with no smoking? What would you say to that?
I don't have a crystal ball. I know what my customer base is now. I know what I lost last year, those 3 months. It does scare me. We're playing it now the way the Breathe Free people want it to be played. At Jefferson Rugby, we're playing it right by the book. I'm hoping we can survive long enough to see that upward trend. In my instance, I had the biggest mouth. I upset a lot of people from Breathe Free Oshkosh. I played above board. I did everything by the book, but I had the biggest problem with what was going on, and I think I've alienated a lot of people, my potential customer base, on their side of the fence. I'm going to lose some of my smokers. I'm worried about staying around long enough to have people forget the issue to where they'll come back.
You did say in the paper, I believe, that it would cost you at your establishment something like $35,000 to $40,000 to put up the divider. Do you plan to do that?
No, simply because the way these smoking bans evolve, after a couple of years, they'll generally come back and try to stiffen that ordinance.
Okay.
So I could put in $40,000 worth of work that in 2 years would be totally useless. If they went to an Appleton-style ban after I built my bar room, they would come back with an all-workplace environment. I'd have a really nice enclosed bar, but they just wouldn't be able to smoke in it.
Right. right.
So
Okay.
I'm not going to spend the money.
How much did you lose last year, if you don't mind my asking?
Guesstimate, because I know what came out of savings. Let's put it that way. My savings account dwindled from $13,000 to nothing. Every 2 years I try to do a major project. 4 years ago I put in all new coolers and freezers in the kitchen, put in a new bar floor, painted the whole place, and then this past year I was hoping in the fall to paint or side the building, and we had saving money for that purpose, and we had $13,000 in there. I used it all up just paying the bills week to week during that 90-day period. We were always promised, don't worry, we're going to show up, we're going to support you, your business should be the same or better. So we staffed the same, we ordered product the same, we prepped the same, and they didn't come.
And you had you let someone go too, is that correct?
We laid off 2 people, a waitress and a cook.
What would you say to people who would say, well, that was general slowdown in the economy, it didn't really have to do with this smoking referendum? You can in your mind, you're convinced that it was the smoking referendum that resulted in you having to lay off 2 people.
If I would have had, the first day of the ordinance was a Monday, and we did about 35% of a normal Monday. Weather wasn't a factor. There was nothing that was a factor that would have got us down there. If the next day would have been great, and next 2 days would have been slow, and then we had another good day. But we had consistently bad days for 2 straight weeks, and that was the demarcation. The first day of the ban was the first day of bad business. And I'm in a residential neighborhood. I can't have any competitors come into my neighborhood. So there wasn't additional competition, there wasn't street paving, there wasn't any factors that would slow me down. So
Now,
it had to be that.
you don't deny, Phil, the Breathe Free side, of course, has been harping on the dangers of secondhand smoke.
Correct.
You don't dispute that secondhand smoke is dangerous, do you?
I don't know if I totally agree with the intensity of the danger. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. But I don't smoke. My wife doesn't smoke. None of our immediate family smokes. I'm talking brothers, sisters on either side. We don't take our 9-year-old son into restaurants that we feel are too smoky. So yeah, I agree with their arguments. I mean, theirs was a health issue. Mine was a business rights issue. And that's what it was. And
So that's really what it boils down to.
Yes.
Even though you could grant that there's the secondhand smoke damage, you don't take your family, your kids to a smoking establishment.
Right.
For you, the business owner's rights trump that.
13 years ago, I was the first independent restaurant in the city of Oshkosh to go completely smoke-free in the dining room. I did that on my own. Nobody had to order me to do it. I felt it was something I had to do for a couple of my waitresses who had allergies. Now, we had a council person on the dais not too long ago who said I said emphysema, but I checked the tapes on this of this show. I said allergies. And I thought, what the heck? If customers can't have their cigarette at the bar and then go in and enjoy a meal for an hour, they have a serious problem. So we went smoke-free 13 years ago. I basically had the Fond du Lac and Nina ordinance 11 years before either of those places even thought of it. So, no, I agree that smoking isn't the greatest thing in the world to do.
Sure.
So what kinds of, I mean, you said earlier that you perhaps have alienated some of the folks from Breathe Free Oshkosh, and maybe someone else in the community.
Yes.
What kinds of plans do you have, if any, since this is so new, just having been ruled on? What kinds of plans do you have to kind of mend the fences and bridge these troubled waters?
Again, like you said, it's only been a couple of days. I've been kind of drafting a letter to the editor, you know, a conciliatory statement, you know, we lost, you know, let's move on with this, let's see if we can make it work. Basically, the ball is in Breathe Free's court. They have to show that this can be supported. I mean, we're reopening lunch hours. We've been closed for lunch hours for about 1.5 years because of a slowdown in business. We're going to push it. We're going to see if we can bring in some extra revenue that way. We've revamped our menu. Healthier items. I mean, I'm a corner fish fry place. I'm not a health club, you know. But we've brought in broiled fish. We have done more salads, health-conscious things also.
And excuse me, that was something that you did prior to this. I mean,
Prior to that.
I was in there for lunch one day, and you were at the bar next to me working on the menu. So.
Right, and it's something, I guess, they have to come into my place to see the attitude. I can't go to their home and drag them to my place. I'm hoping that they will make the first step, be big enough people to come to our place and other places in town. And I'm not just talking myself. And say, okay guys, can we work this out? Let's see if we can work this together. Hell, let's raise a glass of beer and say, let's move on. And go from there.
But you know, in sort of your defense, I mean, I think that's modest of you and big of you to say, maybe I alienated some people. But by the same token, you know, you weren't the only restaurant in town to lose business.
Correct.
And a substantial amount of business at that. And some of those restaurant owners weren't saying anything. I mean, they signed on to the lawsuit eventually, but they really weren't saying anything publicly. So I think that there is a certain segment of the population here in the city that just, even though Breathe Free said, we'll go out and we'll support the restaurants when they're smoke-free, the fact of the matter is, the proof is in the receipts, the gross receipts from your sales, and they didn't. I don't know that they will now.
I'm hoping. I'm not real confident, but we're going to make every effort on our end to make everybody, I'm saying everybody's dining experience, as comfortable as possible. I mean, we're looking at, you know, benches and picnic tables for the smokers outside for the summer months. If we can turn the business around and things really look good, we're looking at possibly putting a Four Seasons room on the outside part of our building with, you know, I wouldn't have to worry about, they could go in there and smoke. So we're trying to make our smokers comfortable and our non-smokers comfortable. I mean, first thing I did was call our carpet cleaning place and say, come on in and clean the carpets. I mean, things like that, the little things that we have to do to, and I don't want to use the word appease because that sounds like they're the crabby people. But we have to make it as comfortable as we can for the largest section cross-section of Oshkosh as we can.
Phil, is part of the conciliation going to be returning to giving charity to the American Cancer Society? Hadn't you announced a few months ago that you were going to stop giving charity to the...
At that point, yes, it was a golf outing in town here. This year I have their poster up in my restaurant.
Oh, you do?
I'm back doing that. Matter of fact, there's a lady called me today and was looking for donations for a benefit they're having for a lady who is diagnosed with cancer and has less than a year to live. And I'm donating gift certificates that she's picking up tomorrow. I guess I'm still a little leery about giving straight to the American Cancer Society because I can't guarantee that it is going to research. If I can donate to a cancer patient who's going through chemotherapy and they need money to get, call me. I'm the first one to donate. Always have been. It still hurts, to see, I see a piece of paper here with the American Cancer Society insignia on it. It still bugs me a little bit, but I can get past that.
Yeah.
And I'm slowly doing that already, so.
Well, I really commend you for that. I mean, I think that's a good example of what you're talking about, a genuine effort to conciliate on this.
Well, believe me, this wasn't all my idea. My wife gave me a good swift kick in the pants. So we got to do this.
Phil, I want to ask you to play hindsight
Sure.
for a second. I know everyone wants to move forward, but I want to just go back to the past on at least one thing. The vote for the referendum initially was 6,307 in favor, 6,123 against. Very close.
Right.
Now, also, there was a referendum that you had put forward, which was, and yours would have said the city does nothing essentially until the state acts.
Correct.
In hindsight, do you think it would have been a better idea not to put your referendum up and just put your efforts working against the referendum that passed?
Yes.
It would have been.
100%.
So what were you thinking at the time?
We had an idea where they were going with theirs. We thought if we went more cut and dried, easier to read, easier to understand, that we would get more people voting on our referendum, just in sheer numbers. More people would look at it and say, well, this makes sense or this doesn't make sense. Whereas their referendum, a little wordy, a little vague, as the judge had ruled. We just felt that to get our point across, we needed to make it as clear as possible. Whereas with theirs, we could have lost votes simply because people didn't understand it. So that's why we did it. That's why we did it. And in hindsight, I think we should have just battled against.
All right. And just one other hindsight item, Cheryl, if you don't mind. I interviewed Mark Harris, who's now our county executive, while he was running. And he said to me on radio that, in fact, when this whole referendum drive started, that he and others did open up to the restaurant owners and that there was an active attempt to get you on board from the beginning. And there seems to be a dispute about that. You haven't been happy, or you were not happy at the time, with what Breathe Free did with the restaurant owners. Can you just, from your perspective, what happened at the initiation stage?
We were always looked upon as the bad guys, the drunken proprietors who just want to party and run our businesses and never have a law.
What led you to believe you were being looked at that way?
One of the comments by Mrs. Prop at a meeting that Mark Harris had arranged at Razzmatazz Restaurant, we were trying to come up with a compromise ordinance that would make all the restaurants happy. I mean, we have a diverse group of restaurants that we have to try to fit into this ordinance.
Was this after they had already come out with referendum language?
Yes.
Okay, so they already had language.
We got hit with that in June of that year, the year before, 2003, I believe it was, and we said, wait a minute, let's sit down and talk about this. I mean, we had gone to the city council, there's a problem with this. Mark Harris was good enough. He had a meeting at his home. 4 representatives from Breathe Free, 4 representatives from our side. Frank Tower was sitting on the council at the time, and Mark Harris were the representatives from the city council there. And we hashed ideas back and forth. And from the get-go, we were talking about the Neenah ordinance and the Fond du Lac ordinance. From the get-go, their side was saying no smoking, no smoke at all is no safe level. There is no safe level of smoking. So we arranged for a second meeting. This was at Razzmatazz Restaurant. Between the first and the second meeting, we went back and we contacted as many restaurateurs as we could for their input. What can we do? Where can we go? Where, because somebody was going to be left out in the cold. Somebody was going to have to fall on the grenade, basically. So we came back to the table. with Mark Harris at Razzmatazz Restaurant. Instead of Frank Tower in attendance, it was Shirley Maddox. And we came out and we very honestly said, we can't find a blanket ordinance that's going to make everybody happy. We just can't. We could not, in our own best interest, or feel good about making someone fall on the grenade. So we said, we're just going to have to fight you. And when we commented, and I'll never forget this, and this is one, I'd love to talk to Mrs. Propp about this. She was sitting to my left, and when we said we couldn't come to a compromise, she says, it doesn't surprise me with all the drinking that goes on at your meetings. How did she assume that? The president of the Oshkosh Tavern League does not drink at all. You know, we've changed. The whole industry in Oshkosh has changed from the corner tavern where everybody staggered home at night to one that we're business people, and we were just trying to make it work. And that has always hurt. And until Mrs. Propp and I have a chance to sit down and talk about that one-on-one, that's always going to be something that's stuck in my craw, because that was condescending and insulting. And that will always bother me.
All right, sure.
Well, before we move on to you know, other smoking issues, is there anything else that Phil Levine would like to say about the Oshkosh ban?
I'm hoping that, you know, the city of Oshkosh rallies around its restaurants. Oshkosh has always been known as a very conservative, fiscally conservative community. We don't have the same economic outlook as Appleton, where people have no problem spending $30 on a meal and you know, that kind of stuff. Oshkosh is very, very penny wise, and we need you guys to come out. I'm not saying buy the $15 meals, but we'd like to see you twice a week for a burger. Come on out, talk to us, see what we're trying to do to make life better in Oshkosh. Find out what we do with the community. You know, we're part of this community. We always have been. I mean, everybody gives to different charities, works with different organizations, things like that. I guess a lot of the restaurant guys want to feel that we're part of this community again, and not some part of motorcycle club that just came in and want to take over the town. You know, we've been part of it for years. I was born and raised in this town. When we opened up Jeff's on Rugby, my parents, I grew up 2 blocks from Jeff's on Rugby. I had 60 relatives within a 3-block radius of Jeff's on Rugby when we first opened up. You know, so I have ties to this community, and through some fault of my own, I've alienated part of this community, and I don't feel part of it, and a lot of my counterparts in the restaurant business don't feel like they're part of Oshkosh anymore either. So let's meet somewhere in the middle and let's move on.
Okay.
Well, I think things are sad when exercising your First Amendment rights result in alienating people to the point where they wouldn't visit your establishment.
Correct.
Yeah, right. Because I don't see what you did that was at all inflammatory. I'm just watching it as a citizen. I mean, you were passionate about this issue. You stuck up for your beliefs. Breathe Free did the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
We tried to keep it a clean fight.
And I think people need to. There you go again, Cheryl.
I don't know why that is doing that, because I turned it off.
Locally owned small businesses are the backbone of any community. So I hope people do take what you say to heart. I think we've got to do whatever we can to support those locally owned small businesses, whether they're restaurants or other types of establishments. And sadly, we don't do enough of that.
Right. You know, they're building downtown Oshkosh, Main Street Oshkosh. They want small businesses down there. We're going to have to support Main Street, but Main Street's not the only street. 41 isn't the only street. You got to support everybody in town, from George's Gaslight Inn, who's in a residential community on the north end of town, to a place like mine, to Jansen's on the east side. There's a lot of small pocket places in town here that need the support. We feel like we're the orphans sometimes, because the city's spending all the money on downtown, and sometimes I get the feeling they'd like to see my business close up. You know, I'm sure that's not the case, and they would like to turn it back into residential property, because I'm a non-conforming structure in a residential neighborhood.
Are you a member of the Chamber of Commerce, Phil?
Yes, yes.
Does the Chamber, I'm not asking you to criticize the Chamber here, but does the Chamber, in your opinion, do enough to promote the locally owned small businesses? Would you like to see the Chamber being more active?
I've mentioned that they do chamber surveys, and I've said that, and they have done small business profiles in their newsletters, and they've been doing that, and it's all small business, just not restaurants. I think the Chamber has done about as well as they could by us through this whole issue. They came out on our side. It wasn't a very popular vote among the Chamber board, from what I understand. but they've done as much as they can for us. I'm still a member, and that says something.
All right. Cheryl?
You know, we've mentioned Appleton a few times, and of course, you know, a month or so ago, they did pass a total workplace smoking ban. But it's extremely limiting, and if you want to take it right to the letter of the law, it even addresses such things as you can't have any open flames, which would eliminate candles. It would eliminate open flames on a stove in a restaurant.
Yes, it would.
Breathe Free Oshkosh didn't play a role in the creation of that ordinance, though, did they? Or
No,
did they work
no.
with someone there?
I don't believe so.
Okay. I mean, you and I have talked privately about this, but tell viewers why that is just so ridiculously restrictive. And, you know, they're challenging that in Appleton. What do you think? I mean, I guess I'm asking you to be a little prognosticator here. What do you see is happening there?
From what I see, I mean, they wanted to make it as blanket coverage as they could so nobody could weasel their way out of this. And unfortunately, if you take it to the letter of the law and to the nth degree, all workplace environments could mean that you could be running an insurance agency out of an office in your home, and you couldn't smoke in your own home. This I got from one of the establishment owners up in Appleton. Churches will not be allowed to light candles. They will not be allowed to have incense if you take it to the nth degree. So there is some ridiculousness in this ordinance, but this is their attempt to make it as Loctite as they can. And there's always going to be a way around something, or somebody's going to weasel something out of this. I wish there was more common sense in that.
There's also, right now in Madison, there is legislation for a smoke-free environment across the state. And Mark Harris, I want to thank our county executive. He dropped something off for me today, even though I was looking it up too. But he dropped off the current state Clean Indoor Air Act, and there's just 4 bullet points here. Number 1, the current state statutes allow smoking in designated areas in restaurants seating more than 50 people. It allows smoking anywhere in restaurants seating less than 50 people. It allows smoking anywhere in restaurants where the alcoholic beverage sales account for more than 50% of the total receipts. And it preserves local control and allows municipalities to pass their own smoke-free ordinances, which we've seen happen here and Appleton and Neenah and so forth. And obviously, those local ones are more restrictive than the state legislation is. What does the newly proposed legislation say?
Well, right now there are 3 bills and 1 school of thought in Madison.
Okay.
The 3 bills, well, the first is the school of thought, which I find untenable. It basically says allow each municipality to dictate their own smoking policy. My one and major problem with that is, as we saw in Oshkosh, we had people traveling to other communities, Budimore, Amarillo, Winneconne, at the time Appleton, Neenah, Menasha, Fond du Lac. You have to think about this logically. These are customers who are going to a place to enjoy a cigarette, which usually happens in the bar area. They're having a couple of cocktails, a cigarette, dinner, a couple of after-dinner drinks, and their cigarette because they can't have it in Oshkosh. And then you put these possibly impaired drivers back on the road. Doesn't sound like a sound strategy to me. Mad Mothers, the Wisconsin DOT, they'll both tell you the more miles an impaired driver drives, the greater the chances of an accident. And we're inviting them to drive. So I don't think leaving it to each municipality is a great idea. Another one of the bills has a 25% demarcation. If you do more than 25% of your total sales in food, you would have to be smoke-free. If you do less than that, you're considered a tavern, and there you have a smoking environment. When you mess with percentages, you open the doors to cheating. And you're going to run into the same types of problems we're seeing in Oshkosh with the 30%. You will see cheating. I find that totally untenable too. You're inviting people to become dishonest. And the honest people are the ones that are going to be left out in the cold.
And with that, Phil, if I can just interject for a moment, is how long would those types of exemptions be in place? Because here in Oshkosh now, under this particular ordinance, the exemption is only for a year.
Correct.
And then the business no longer has an exemption. They have to go completely smoke-free. Is there any kind of stopgap like that
No,
built into the states?
I believe each year a tavern can reapply for its tavern
Okay.
exemption, and they would continue to be a smoking establishment. If they do not reapply at that anniversary date, they would then lose that exemption.
Okay.
So at the state level, there's no reapplication. You would be that way until another state bill would come along that would
All right,
take care of that.
so Phil, the Tavern League supports something called the Smoke-Free Dining Act.
Yes.
Assembly Bill 414. Now, I went and got the Smoke-Free Wisconsin talking points
Okay.
against this, because
Sure.
they're solidly against this,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And let's see how you answer it. One thing they say is that the Smoke-Free Dining Act would prevent any local Wisconsin community from enacting any legislation in the future that is stronger than the state statute.
Correct.
And you would support that? A local community shouldn't be able to do something stronger than the state?
Again, no, I do not think each municipality should have that, because you're going to get the traveling issue again. You will get the traveling issue again, and I don't think that's a great idea.
If you just keep something statewide, then everybody is on a level playing field.
Correct.
Which is basically what you were trying to do in the immediate Fox Valley area.
Right.
By sort of mirroring what you wanted to do after Nina and
In Oshkosh,
you
we
know,
were
some of the others.
micromanaging the same issue that's going on at the state level now.
But the problem is that the Smoke-Free Dining Act it's not really anti-smoking legislation, is it?
Yes. They say it does not decrease smoking. I'm going to tell you right here, it's going to. What this does is, if you do not have a liquor license or a combination beer-wine license and do not have a full-service bar area, all your dining tables have to be smoke-free. So places like a Perkins or a George Webb's, or places that are restaurants that typically do not have bars, you would eliminate all smoking sections there. So you're eliminating smoking in those restaurants. If you have that liquor licenses in place and you have a full-service bar, you can designate those areas as your smoking area. At that point, I believe it's up to the individual consumer to look at the establishment and how it's set up to see if that meets their personal requirements for smoke-free air. A place like Jansen's that's one room would be different than a Kodiak Jack's, which is quite more expansive, and you can get further away from it. You know, at that point, you have to rely on the intelligence of the customer. And I don't say that that act is the end-all. I look at this as a jumping-off point. I had an opportunity to talk with Senator Cheryl Ressler on May 12th at the open hearings for this particular bill. Cheryl is in favor of individual municipalities having their say in this. My point to Cheryl with this is, why can't we handle the smoking issue much like the state has handled the blood alcohol content levels, the BAC? It's a health issue, it concerns everybody, and it's a statewide issue. When I started in business 28 years ago, the legal blood alcohol content level in Wisconsin was 0.15. If you could crawl to your car, they'd let you drive home.
Oh, yeah.
About 6-7 years after that, we went to 0.1. It was federally mandated. It was across the board. Everybody in the state dealt with it. It hurt each and every liquor license establishment. But we all dealt with it. We all evolved. We adapted to it. Years later, as federal highway funds were held over our heads, 0.08 shows up. Again, across the board, we all dealt with it, we all evolved. As I said to Senator Ressler, I said, why can't this be our 0.1? Right now we're at 0.15, you know, theoretically. We go to this bill, it's a 0.1, we wait for a couple of years, look at an economic impact study of the bars and restaurant industry across the state. If it was not impacted, tweak it. This is not a solid ceiling. This is a paper ceiling. It can be changed at the state level at any time. If it shows no adverse economic impact to the bar restaurant industry in the state, let's modify it. Let's make it a little more strict. My point from day one is, let's do this at a slow, rational, reasoned rate so we can all adapt and evolve. Our business, the bar restaurant industry, has adapted and evolved over the almost 3 full decades I've been in it. Give us an opportunity to let's do that into the future. That's
Phil-
why we support that.
Phil, convince someone like me who's a big proponent of local control why we should support this assembly bill. It does take away the local control, right?
Yes, yes.
So explain to me again why it's worth suspending local control for this bill.
Because local control gives you a hodgepodge of ordinances across the state that will force people to move. Imagine if the state handled the BAC levels the same way. Appleton was 0.2, Green Bay was 0.15, Oshkosh was 0.1. You're going to have people going somewhere so they can drink more and then driving home. Same thing here. You're going to put people on the road, and alcohol is still going to be involved. That's my... Local control is always the best. I micromanage that exact same argument with my business. My control of my business is the best. But when it comes to an issue that's health-related, safety-related, I think you have to limit the opportunities of people putting themselves in harm's way by traveling.
So your problem with the major competing bill with the Smoke-Free Dining Act that you support, the major competing bill is the Smoke-Free Workplace Act.
Correct.
Representative Gottlieb and Senator Darling, I guess, two Republicans. Your main problem with that bill is that it maintains local control? The
No.
Smoke-Free Workplace Act?
The Smoke-Free Workplace Act, I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, but I
Okay.
believe that's a statewide mandated no smoking in any
Right.
workplace environment. Again, it takes local control away from you. I mean, you're following state mandate. But it's as strict as it possibly can be.
But it preserves the local ordinances that have been placed. It wouldn't suspend those, from my understanding.
You're talking about the Gottlieb,
Gottlieb
one?
one,
Yeah.
the Smoke-Free
Well, it
Workplace
also
Act.
allows them to pass their own.
Right.
So they could pass something, again, more restrictive than what the state had passed. In other
But
words,
if-
local municipalities can pass something.
Yeah, and it eliminates smoking everywhere. you
So
know.
what would be more restrictive than that?
Well, I don't know. It's
I think
just-
that's
this
your
is what it says.
concrete ceiling. How much further can you push the envelope if you're not allowing smoking? It's the old joke that's been going around. It's not that they're against smoking, it's against smoking anywhere. Well, when you eliminate all possible places of smoking except a person's car or their home, how much more
Okay,
municipal control could there be?
so why wouldn't you support that bill then?
I would support it if the other option wasn't there. Because I'm in the alcohol and food service industry,
Okay.
obviously the Wisconsin Smoke-Free Dining Act is a little more attractive to me.
Yeah.
But the total smoking ban levels the playing field, and that's still one of my points that I enjoy.
Let's talk about some of the politics of this, Phil.
Okay.
The Smoke-Free Dining Act, the bill that you support, is opposed by the American Lung Association,
Sure.
American Heart Association, American Cancer Society, Smoke-Free Wisconsin, Wisconsin Public Health Association, and Wisconsin Association of Local Health Departments and Boards. It's supported by the Tavern League and the Bowling Alley Association.
Right.
All right. Tavern League got in trouble recently with whining and dining some legislators and so on.
Right.
Do you think this is going to play as the health organizations supporting the Smoke-Free Workplace Act and a group that is now implicated in whining and dining legislators? I mean, do you think the Tavern League can get this passed, the Smoke-Free Dining Act?
If I were a betting person, I'd say there's less than 50% chance of it passing. You know, that's just my gut feeling from that one day down in Madison
Yeah.
on May 12th. That's just talking to Greg Underheim, Carol Ressler, and a couple other people. I think there's less than a 50-50 chance of it getting passed.
Now, Carol Ressler, you said, or you implied, is opposed to the Smoke-Free Dining Act?
Yes,
Because she wants to see the local control maintained.
correct, correct.
Did you talk to Mr. Underheim?
He supports the Wisconsin Smoke-Free Dining Act.
The act that you support?
Yes.
Okay, he has said that.
Yes.
Did you talk to other local representatives like Dean Coffert and people like that?
Dean
Okay.
Coffert does support the Smoke-Free Dining Act. He is a Tavern League supporter, so
Okay.
he does support that.
Okay, very
But
good.
I have heard that through
Sure, through
secondhand
others.
sources.
Sure.
Did Senator Ressler say why she feels that the local control is so important? I mean, you've made, I think, a fairly compelling argument as to why local control should not be there. And it's, again, so that everybody has a level playing field that they're on.
Talking with Carol, we were standing in the back of the hearing room, and we talked about our opposing viewpoints. And I think I took her by surprise. Just reading her facial expressions, I think I brought up something she didn't think about. And she did open the door for us to sit and have another conversation about this. And to Mrs. Ressler's credit, she came there against what we were doing, but I was there with another Tavern League member, Pat Pertel, and we had been standing in the audience for almost 3.5 hours and hadn't had a chance to speak yet. There were so many people there, and we had time constraints. We had to come back to Oshkosh. We both have businesses to run, and we told Carol that, and she was nice enough to write a note to the chairman of the committee, and on her way out, slipped him the note, and we got to walk up there and speak our piece next. So she allowed our argument, which was basically different than hers, up there. So maybe we made an impact. Maybe it's something she didn't think about. And to be honest with you, I don't think she was fully versed in the Fond du Lac ordinance, because there were some things that I told her about the Fond du Lac ordinance that I think caught her off guard.
You know what I don't understand? If smoking is so bad, and we all agree that it is, why doesn't a state like Wisconsin make smoking illegal?
Ching ching. It's a tax thing. The money that the tobacco industry brings into state and federal government it's tough to replace.
I mean, we want people to quit smoking, a noble goal, yet we will use tax revenue from cigarettes to fund things. And so, I mean, if you're relying on tax revenue from something, you're basically requiring that people use it.
Correct.
Which I don't think is necessarily ethical. I mean, to require people to use a deadly substance so that you can get the tax revenue from it, because does there seem to be any evidence, and this is not your area expertise, I know, but is there any evidence that when taxes on cigarettes go up, people smoke less?
Yes.
Oh, there is?
Yes, there has been. It's been stated in the Northwestern and a couple other publications. As a matter of fact, there is a bill, it may be part of the budget, the Wisconsin budget, looking for another $1 a pack raise in cigarette taxes. And one of the reasonings behind that is studies that show that younger kids, as the price of cigarettes go up, are less likely to smoke because, I mean, they're running around at minimum wage jobs.
My own anecdotal evidence with smokers is that they can be dirt poor, but they'll always find money for cigarettes.
My father,
and if they are really addictive, which I think they are, it makes sense.
My father was a 3-pack-a-day Camel smoker since the day he turned 9 or 10 years old. He grew up in the iron ore country of northern Michigan and then Chicago through the Depression. At age 47, after 38 years of smoking cigarettes, he quit. And I'll always remember my father saying, when cigarettes get to 50 cents a pack, I'm quitting. He made it to 75 before he quit.
Oh, gee.
One we didn't talk about was Assembly Bill 372.
Okay.
That prohibits smoking in all indoor and outdoor areas of bars and restaurants. It prohibits smoking in all offices defined as places of work in which the principal activities are professional, clerical, or administrative. I don't know why just those three are singled out, but it preserves local control and allows municipalities to pass their own smoke-free ordinances, and it preserves 20 existing local smoke-free ordinances that are in place across the state. Why would you and the Tavern League be opposed to that?
No smoking in bars and restaurants. Basically what happens with these ordinances, you're taking immediately a certain segment of our customer base away. That's just simple economics of it. We would like a gradual weaning of this. If it's going to happen, do it gradually. If all of a sudden it's like putting somebody at the door. You can come in, you can come in, you can't come in. You can come in, you can come in, you can't come in. And we need, especially in the economy we've been going through and a city like Oshkosh, we need to reach out to the largest number of people we can. And I think that's basically it. It's narrowing our customer base.
Now, Phil, we just had elections here in Oshkosh, and I believe you were openly supporting Joe Youngworth.
Yes.
You even read a statement for him that he couldn't make a meeting, and I think Brian Peschel you were openly supporting. They did not make it to the council. I mean, can you give us your general feelings about the election results?
We got our hats handed to us, plain and simple. I'm a South Sider. I'm a cobblestoner. I learned that one here. I think Joe Youngworth would do a good job. I think Brian has done a good job. He grew with the
Yeah,
job.
he did.
People who are in these Propel Oshkosh, Forward Oshkosh, scare me a little bit. I'm a little bit old school. I don't know enough about these organizations, but they seem to march to a little bit different drummer than what we do. I mean, speaking on a personal level, I'm on the corner of 10th and Rugby Street. I'm 2.5 miles from Main Street. I'm another 1.25 miles from Highway 41. Nobody's throwing money at me to keep going.
Exactly.
And I needed people on the city council who would look at me and treat me as an equal to the Main Street business. And I think I would have gotten that out of Joe, Brian. I get that out of Mr. Esslinger. Mr. Castle has always treated us well. The Meredith Shiremans, the Brian Baines of the city council, I don't know well enough. I mean, I've talked to Meredith a couple of times and I like her, but not enough of a track record to know what I'm going to get from her.
Now, you're a pretty articulate guy in your lifetime Oshkosh, small business owner, and lots of people have always wondered, why doesn't Phil Levine throw his hat in the ring? Would you ever consider doing that?
Not as long as I'm married. No. Running our business is a more than full-time job, and we have a 9-year-old, and I've talked to Paul about, I mean, his responsibilities. It's just not the hour-and-a-half long council meeting. It's committee meetings and things like that he has to attend. And it's shown a strain with his family, his kids and stuff. He misses his time with his children. I don't get enough quality time with my 9-year-old that I would want to even give up more of it.
Sure.
Was there anything else that you wanted to address with respect to the various pieces of legislation that are out there right now?
I think as long, the bottom line for me is the basic fundamental tenet that I have to see in a statewide anything is that it is statewide, that it does cover and make it fair for everybody who's in the same industry, the same community, the same geographical area. I mean, that's the big thing. Everything else we can work with and around. I'll admit that. For me personally, sure, I'd love to see my restaurant that serves alcohol be allowed to have a smoking area. I mean, that's just for me. Is that the best thing for the state? I don't know. I pay my bills. I don't pay the state's bills. Well, I kind of pay the state's bills, but not all of them. So I guess the bottom line is I want to see fair and equitable across the state and to have it make common sense. Right now, the Wisconsin Smoke-Free Dining Act is choice number 1. Number 2 is all workplace environments. Smoke-free would be number 2. I'll be fighting hard for number 1.
And where are these right now? I mean, because obviously nothing has been passed yet. Where are these in the legislative and assembly process?
Basically, they're at open hearings in front of committees, subcommittees, just getting input. There really hasn't been any serious talk about it. I went on the Wisconsin State website this morning, and nothing past May 12th has even been brought up about any of these. So, it's still in the formative stages, and I don't know enough about state government, but I can't see anything moving fast at state government, so it may be 2006 before something comes around.
Oh. Phil, talk to us a little bit about the restaurant business. That probably is one of the toughest businesses to survive in. Isn't it true that, what percentage of new restaurants fail in the first year?
35 to 40%.
What is it? What is it about that business?
You're looking at a very transitory employee population. I mean, it's usually minimum wage jobs. The places in Oshkosh pay above minimum because it is a tough industry and we don't have a lot of people looking to get into the restaurant business. We have people moving from place to place for a 10-cent raise. I mean, there's no benefits involved, things like that. So you can lose quality quickly. And customers are very fickle. I'll never forget the first time I raised beer prices a nickel. If I could have been burned in effigy, I would have been. I had people who said, we're not coming in.
Is that right?
But sure, but the thing is, when our beer companies give us a price increase, we usually absorb 1 or 2 of them because it's pennies, but once it gets past that 15-cent stage of glass, we have to raise a quarter, type deal, and we'll absorb losses later on. If one person does it, you got to know darn well within the next couple of weeks, everybody's going to do it because they all got the same price increases. So it's a very fickle business. People love doing the new things. We just had Kodiak Jack's open up, and they are going through a fantastic honeymoon stage. When they seat close to 300 people and your barroom seats another 150, they're pulling people from everywhere. You know, when I'm saying other restaurants and stuff. Some restaurants are having a tough time dealing with that. I know it's affected our Saturday nights. It's intercompetition, and Mr. Engelman was one of our supporters on this whole smoking thing. I got to know him through this. I respect the man greatly, but he's got to stop messing with my Saturdays, you know? You know, that type of thing. We have a very interesting group of restaurateurs in town. We borrow from each other. If we're short something, I can call Bob at the Rocks and say, hey, I'm short some Thousand Island dressing. You got a gallon? Yeah, back and forth. If there's employment issues, you know, somebody is from Roxy is coming to Jeff's for a job, you know, we give honest and open evaluations of these people. Nobody wants to see anybody close up. The more successful restaurants you have in town, the better chance you have of drawing people in from out of town. And that's what we're trying to do. So, but it is a lot of work. It's a lot of difficult work.
Yeah, and the reason why I raised that question, Phil, is because even though I'd like to see no smoking in all restaurants, I think a lot of people think about these issues in the abstract, and they don't realize what it is like to run a restaurant business. And so I think we have to have much more of an appreciation for why when people like you say this is going to hurt me, we don't have to agree with you, but at least we should walk in your shoes a little bit and understand what guys are going, and then maybe go and get some meals.
Yeah, I would just,
You know?
I would just wish, and I've said it before some council meetings, the smoking ban hurt us. I didn't suddenly develop a brain tumor. I didn't suddenly get stupid. Something happened. We know our customers. I don't expect somebody to walk into my place and ask for chop suey. We're not a Chinese restaurant. You know, you should know the place you're going into beforehand. There are certain items in that restaurant that is drawing you there. If it's the menu, the atmosphere, the employees that you get to deal with, especially in our location, everybody knows everybody. I mean, people are bringing in produce from their gardens and trading at the bar and stuff. It's like a little farmer's market in the summer sometimes. But you know, that's what we do, and that's why we know our customers, and that's why this scares me. I know my customers. I'm going to lose some very valuable people to places very close to me that have some of these exemptions, and I can't blame them. They have an addictive habit that they can't kick. But the biggest problem I have with the traveling bit in Oshkosh and how ours is set up in the gray areas and some of the cheating that's going on, I can have a group of 15 people, and I have a specific group of NASCAR fans every Sunday who go to one of the houses and they enjoy the NASCAR race type deal, and then they come down by me generally for an after dinner drink and carry-out food. Well, when I couldn't smoke, they all went somewhere else, and only 2 people out of that 15 were smokers to make everybody happy.
We've got to wrap up, but thank you very much for being here, and
Thanks for having
good
us
luck in
again.
the future. And thanks to you, as always, for joining us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care and keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.